All right, everyone, when they say this part out loud, you might as well believe them. Joe Biden confirming he literally doesn't give a shit about the U.S. border crisis. We have over 14 million people in the United States illegally. Some of these individuals, it's like, some chick comes across with her 3 kids or something, and in order to govern, you have to be realistic and you have to prioritize. I'll get into my own thoughts with regards to the illegal immigrant crisis that we're suffering as well separately in a moment. He's saying the silent part out loud. Link in the description, archived of course. He was asked openly. He's down relatively close to the border. Kamala has done this a number of times despite being border czar. And he's asked flat out, hey, do you plan to go visit the U.S. border to see what's kicking up around there? You're basically one short flight away, or maybe like 30 minutes by motorcade, because down there the highways actually work. It's not like New England. If you're in New England and you've never been down to the Rio Grande or something like that, you should definitely see it. Just be real careful about the drivers down there. They can be a handful. It's sort of like Massachusetts point south. Anyway, he's down there. He's clearly got the spare time. He's taking long weekends in Delaware virtually every week. He's not a workhorse. He's a lazy bones. And he says, no, I got better things to do. There are bigger issues at hand right now. Bigger issues than the U.S. border crisis. Like what? You claim that the economy is going fine, so you don't have to worry about that. You claim there's no problem in foreign policy. You completely ignore Taiwan, for example. Well, there's no problem there. You claim record unemployment, labor force participation is ticking up, which it's not, but okay. Wages are beginning to rise against inflation, which they're not, but okay. You claim the gas prices are coming down, that's cheerful. People can travel for the holidays. It'll still cost them monumentally more than when you first began your stewardship, but you claim everything's hunky-dory. You just got a big midterm wins, and the economy's fine, and everything's hunky-dory. So then why can't, instead of going to Delaware for your long weekend, to go and bike and possibly fall over and break your skull again, there's a reason why he wears a helmet when he's biking. It's not for the looks. Why don't you stop over and do at least what Kamala did? Kamala Harris was very briefly near the U.S. border as border czar last year. She went down there for a photo op, basically. She took selfies with some Border Patrol agents. They probably had to go through the ranks and find out who was willing to stand next to her. Hey, somebody here, take one for the team. We'll give you an extra week's pay for it. You have to deal with the smell, and you'll forever be known as that particular ICE agent. You'll be the laughing stock of the barracks, but we'll make it good. Don't worry. We'll give you money, and we'll reprimand anyone who teases you too harshly for posing next to the poser. She's border czar. She, at the very least, took a photo op with some ICE agents, which, probably rankled her as much as it did them. Biden's not even willing to get near the U.S. border. Why? Because it's bad optics. Because we've got a U.S. border crisis. We have a wide open border. This administration is not remotely interested in plugging the gaps. It had to be dragged kicking and screaming to even use pre-allocated money from the Trump era to complete several border projects that were already planned and paid for. You'll remember last year in Arizona they were complaining. There was this place near the border. They had all of the bollard walls up there. They're already manufactured. They're ready to go. They're sitting out rusting in the sun. Hundreds and hundreds of panels there, miles and miles worth of wall, just sitting out there in the middle of the wasteland of southern Arizona, basically getting some sun. Yeah, lots and lots of it. It's Arizona after all. Joe Biden saying the silent part out loud. I don't give a shit. Who cares? Here's the thing. Even in previous anti-closing or guarding the border administrations, Obama, George W., the globaloid types, going all the way back to Reagan, the only exception being Trump. He tackled the issue, did a good job considering 2 years of nonstop obstruction by his own unipartyists, the anti-MAGA groups within especially the U.S. House. He tackled the issue. Ronald Reagan attempted comprehensive reform back in the middle of the 1980s. Unfortunately, what happened with that is that you didn't end up getting lasting border defenses. Everything else was provided for. You had certain groups that were granted amnesty. You had certain groups that continued to be, shoved out of the country. You had a hiring of new agents. You had some upgrades to some existing border facilities. The one thing that you didn't get with the grand bargain that Ronald Reagan oversaw at that time, I think it was Stimson-Mazzoli, if I remember correctly, was actually improving the southern border at large. We should have done it back then. It had already become an issue. President after president, when running for election or re-election, have all said exactly the same thing. Well, yeah, the people need to come in legally. I love immigrants, but they have to come in the right way. Trump said this. He was castigated, by the way, for saying this as though he was a Nazi, even though it was literally, almost word for word, the same exact speech that Obama had made in 2008. I compared them at the time. I was astonished. It was like a 90% similarity. It could have been made by the same speechwriter. Obama said the same thing when up for re-election. Romney said the same thing facing off against him. McCain said the same thing facing off against Obama the first time. George W. v. Gore, they said the same thing. W. v. Kerry, they said the same thing. Going all the way back again to the early 1980s, Jimmy Carter mentioning the same fucking shit. The border crisis has been festering for a long time. What is new about this particular statement is that typically you do not get such a callous disinterest, a callous dissociation from importance on the border crisis itself. Biden, to my knowledge, is the first modern president to be so laid back about the issue. It's also bad optics. He'll take a hit in his approval literally based on this. It is dwindling again, by the way. It's going back to its long-term floor. Soft floor, that is. Expect it to stabilize there as predicted before. I was correct for about 5 months. It'll probably do the same thing now. Unless the world economy falls out from under us, then it'll go lower. That is likely to happen next year. We see signs of it in the UK right now. I'll be analyzing that in today's live stream, by the way. What's happened is he's totally disinterested. Now, here's how to solve the problem. It's not enough to simply seal the border. You could make like what some people, I guess, expected the Trump wall to be, which is like a medieval fortification, a 50-foot Byzantine-looking double wall with turrets and spires and stuff like that. If you really want to foot the bill for that, I mean, you can. You can do that if you really want to, I suppose. It's not necessarily effective in an area that's prone to earthquakes, as several parts along the southern border are, but, you can make it decorative, or you can make it out of titanium and have big silvery spires, like big spikes hanging off it. You could make it look like the Wall of Mordor if you wanted to, with the Black Gate and everything. You could engineer that if you really, where there's a will, there's a way. It's not like you don't have enough funny money to fund such a project. They can print $1 trillion out of thin air for a bailout that doesn't bail anyone out and just pays for a bunch of pork barrel. I think they can probably figure out how to build a goddamn wall. Anyway, Biden's the first one to openly state that he's not interested in that at all. That wouldn't be enough, though. Even if Biden were to come out today and say, yeah, I've decided it really is an issue after all. We're gonna try for amnesty, so don't worry, progressive groups, etc. But we really do need to solve the problem. He has a moment of clarity and decides to allocate $500 billion to fully upgrade the entire southern border. Again, a bollard with an out-facing a berm and a goddamn moat full of crocodiles or something like that. Even that wouldn't solve the issue. You'd still have a trickling in of illegals anyway, because people would fly into the country as tourists and overstay. By the way, that's over 1 million of those individuals. Many of them aren't from South America or Central America. Some of them are from East Europe. Some are from parts of Asia. Some are from Africa. They come as tourists and then they don't leave. That's how it happens in other parts of the country typically. You have some from the Canadian border. It's relatively scant. It's more expensive to do that. And the people that are coming in illegally typically, they're not in the upper income echelons. That being said, you need to be realistic about the people that are already here. I see some people, hardliners on the right, saying, well, we'll do the wall thing and then we'll just kick them all out. You would have to violate the Fourth Amendment to do that, because you'd have to go door to door, banging on people's doors in the middle of the night, raiding condominiums and shit to find everyone. You would be violating, arguably, the 10th Amendment, because some states would want to opt out. Now, this is a problem that sanctuary state, sanctuary city policies do need to be addressed. Until they are, though, the 10th technically holds true. I see that as a problem, but Congress has to address that separately. Then you have the problem of actually the logistics of moving 14 million people back to their home countries when in some cases you don't know what their home country is. It would be a logistic nightmare. I'm of the mind that we should prioritize those that have committed a crime, even minor crimes, those that have no legitimate ties to the nation, so they don't have a child, they don't have a spouse or some family member that they're living with or something. People that don't have jobs, etc., they're taking from society rather than giving to it. This would be probably about half of that total. Well, kick them out. They're illegally in the country. Asylum seekers are a little bit different, but what composition of this 14 million people or more are actually legit asylum seekers? See, Biden won't answer that question. He won't go to the border for more than the idea of just, you might get a shot of Biden in the foreground and then a bunch of people coming up the embankment behind him in the background, which would be a nightmare optically. It's not just about that. He also doesn't want to answer that particular question about, hey, what about those asylum seeker policies that you have rapidly expanded? Getting rid of Remain in Mexico, for example. You've gone back on that, and the courts helped you do so, which is astonishing. You basically greenlight anyone who walks into the country by any venue, and they get processed briefly. They may or may not tell you even the right country that they're from. They probably don't have their passports or any paperwork. And then they wander off afterwards. What about, by the way, that 1/3 of all of the unaccompanied minors that were sent off to live with guardians or relatives? They've lost track of them. Children. Tens of thousands of them. You know where they are right now? They're in brothels. Or they're working in a dimly lit basement 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Or something like they're slaves. Biden has contributed to an enormous movement of human slavery into the United States. I hate to tell you, slavery was never abolished. It just changed form. Some people just happen to get wages and have bare minimum protections in the process. Biden's brown people, not so much. He loves the fact that these people are illegally in the country because it's much easier to exploit them. Where else are they going to restock their private islands with? That's about all. Peace out.